Monthly update for the month of June, folks. We sit here early July with a rather busy looking weekend of test match rugby ahead. Italy is taking on Samoa, the All Blacks are taking on England, the Boks are taking on Ireland, the Aussies and the Welsh are going to go head to head, the Argentinians and the French, the US and Romania, the Scottish and the Italians, the Scottish and the Canadians. There's a smorgasbord of rugby this weekend, folks. It is certainly a great time to be a fan. Thank you so much for coming along, for liking videos, subscribing, for, what else is there, commenting, all that kind of jazz. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to go through a few kind of news topics, including Portia Woodman, including the Boks wearing white, including the under-20s, and a few stats and thanks as well. You know, I love me a good stat. Hot topics for the month of June. Boks against Wales was certainly a big one. That was kind of one of the appetizers to the month of July, the late June tests. Not all the players available for both sides, but certainly it was a big result for South Africa. Also, Hoskins Sotutu not making the All Black squad was a bit of a contentious one. I had a look at some of his stats to break down where his kind of strengths and weaknesses were at. I found that an interesting one to make. Some of the feedback was interesting on that one. How dare you question Razor? You need to just go with him 100%, or how dare they not select Hoskins? I think that's what being a rugby fan is all about, right? Having a yarn about what's going on and where the selections are at. I find that one of the most interesting parts of the game. Also, the All Black squad announcement just generally was a pretty of interest one, just because it's Scott Robertson's first squad, and I think there's a lot of, at least here in New Zealand, there's a lot of expectations around what he is going to be able to do with that team. Special thanks also, please, to the patrons who support the channel financially every month. If you are able to do so, I would love to see you join us. We do at least a weekly video on Patreon talking about things like the Super Brew, like what were my predictions and what were my outcomes. Sometimes, well, this year not been that great, to be honest. Did all right in the Premiership, but Super Rugby pretty average. We'll see how I go with these June, July internationals, and any kind of other hot topics that come up, head over on Patreon. So that link down in the description. Big thanks to Angus and Jack McHugh and to all these other long-term supporters of the channel. Your support is very much appreciated. But also just, you know, if you're not going to go on Patreon, just like the videos. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. I don't ask very often, but it does help out the channel as we make our way to kind of like 85,000. If you can be part of that group, I would love to see it. Speaking of you guys, the audience, well, I say guys, 91% male. Just kind of hovering around that mark for the last few months. Top 5 countries: South Africa number 1, New Zealand number 2, UK 3, Australia 4, and Ireland 5. There were even 141 views from Mexico. If you are in Mexico, welcome along. Whether you're an expat or a kind of local Mexican rugby fan, welcome along. And there's even a city called Boksburg in South Africa. There were 400 odd views from a town called Boksburg. Is it a small town? I assume it is, because I've not heard of it, but my knowledge of South African geography doesn't go much past where all the major rugby cities are at, to be honest. But Boksburg, that's a hell of a name. That'd be like having a small town in New Zealand called All Blacksville. Great name. Welcome to any of you Boksburg folk. But yes, as I said, thank you guys for being along. It is certainly a pleasure to talk to you about some rugby. Rugby news has been going on. Portia Woodman-Wickliffe has decided to retire after the upcoming Olympics. If you don't follow women's rugby, she is potentially, I mean, all these conversations about who's the GOAT kind of come up all the time, but she's certainly up there in the conversation with the greatest women's player of all time. Like, she has 2 Rugby World Cup winners medals from 2017 and the 2021 tournament, which was played in 2022. She didn't last long in that second game because she got smashed in the face, which saw England get a red card. She's an Olympic gold medalist. She's a Commonwealth Games medalist. She's got 20 Rugby World Cup tries. She holds the record for 7 tries with over 250. She's been Women's World Player of the Year. She's done everything. She's done everything. So, hell of a career, 32 years old. She's got one last chance for glory at the Paris Olympics. So, heck of a career, great servant for New Zealand rugby. Maybe a shame that she's only been playing the game as the women's game is just starting to take its first steps into professionalism. Like, if she was just starting off in her career now, that would be amazing for her. But I mean, that happened with the men's players, right? A lot of these guys were there at that time, you know, in the 90s when it was transitioning from one to the other. So Yeah, she certainly made the most of all her time in black. So after the Olympics, hope she enjoys whatever she decides to settle down and do. Also, the Springboks are going to wear white. Remember at the World Cup, the Springboks played in white against Ireland. The Springboks are at home, and I guess the rugby tradition is that the home side changes. We saw the Six Nations switch that this year. I actually kind of prefer home side not changing. But just because you see the crowd's all wearing whatever the colours are of the home side. If in the Boks, it's going to be that dark green. I quite like the home side wearing the home kit and the away team having to change. For me, that just makes more sense. So in this game, they're going to go with the traditional way. So the Irish guys will be wearing green and the Boks will be wearing white. It just doesn't feel right for mine, but that is what it is. We'll see how they go in their alternative kit. I think there's even been studies done about whether it affects player performance to have that kind of changing colour, but I think the results were relatively negligible. And under 20, sometimes a marker of how the teams we can expect to see do in the future. Like the Italian team in recent times has had a pretty good under 20 side, although they got hammered recently. But, you know, we've seen some of their under 20 players come through. France may be even more notable example. Their under 20s team has been very good. The Irish under 20 side has been very good, and you start to see some of those players push through. I gave France as maybe a more notable one because Fabien Galtier's had, over his tenure, more of a clear out and really brought through a lot of the under 20s guys compared to some of the other coaches. But yeah, the under 20s first round of the championships theirs is done. New Zealand and France got wins in Pool A. Ireland and Australia got wins in Pool B. And South Africa and England got wins in Pool C. I think South Africa had the biggest win of the weekend with 57 points to 7 over Fiji. New Zealand and Wales was pretty high scoring. That one was 41-34. Wales picked up a couple of losing bonus points in that game. And Ireland over the Italians 55-15. A lot of kind of mismatches amongst the results, to be fair, with Wales the only side picking up any kind of bonus points. This weekend maybe looks to be kind of similar, but New Zealand are playing France, which should be a pretty tasty one if any of us can find time amongst all the other games that are on to watch some under 20s. But as I said, it's always a interesting kind of marker just to see where the kind of future talent is at. Not every under 20s player makes it at the senior level, but yeah, it is certainly an interesting one to watch just in terms of the depth. But yes, once again, cheers folks for coming along. Thank you for subscribing and liking and all that jazz. It really does help us out. Enjoy the month of July because it's going to be an absolutely bonkers one with all the amount of rugby on. You guys let me know your thoughts on what's been going on, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.